Hello everybody. A lot of you have been following us since the very beginning and so know the backstory of Chuffed, but some of you are new to our channel and so we thought we would give you a little bit of a background on how I became the sailing vet. So I found Chuffed online in 2016. She was located in Las Perlas Islands, right near Panama City, and I ended up moving on board in 2017 in February. Before I moved on to Chuffed, I was actually a wildlife veterinarian in Australia, working 50-50 at a wildlife clinic and a small animal domestic clinic. I found it really hard to go between the small animal clinic and the wildlife clinic because a koala would come in that had been hit by a car, and I was able to just do all of the treatment the koala needed. But then I would go back to the small animal clinic and somebody would bring their puppy in that had been hit by a car, and if they couldn't afford to pay for the treatment, I wouldn't be able to do anything. And so I really got disillusioned about the business of veterinary medicine, not being able to treat animals based on their income or ability to pay for the treatment. So I really wanted to get into charity work. During my time working in Australia, I also travelled a little bit overseas and volunteered at wildlife clinics, and so that further inspired me to apply for a job at a wildlife charity overseas. And so I actually got a job working in China at a bear rescue centre, and it was a really awesome place to be, rescuing bears from the bear bile industry. Moving to China involved downsizing a lot. So I sold my car, I packed everything I owned into 2 bags, got rid of everything else so that I could move into the sanctuary with the bears, living in a pretty small room. So I went pretty minimalist, and it was really inspiring working there, doing charity work, and I really enjoyed the elements of working with the local people, helping to educate them on animal care. And so that really inspired me not only to want to travel more and see more of the world, but to be able to improve animal health and welfare wherever I went. And so the idea of doing a veterinary clinic on a sailboat was born. Before I became the sailing vet, I was a bear vet in China. The bear bile industry is quite a large industry that involves farming bile from bears' livers and using it for traditional medicine. It's quite a cruel industry and it is still legal in China. So Animals Asia has been working there for many years, looking to try and end the bear bile industry, as well as rescuing bears and putting them in our sanctuary for rehabilitation. One of the best things about working for Animals Asia was seeing how much a big organisation could achieve. They were very focused on that one industry and making really big change. But it also helped me see what a small organisation can do with a little bit more flexibility, and so I really wanted to be able to move from place to place, helping improve animal welfare and health in everywhere I visited. I had actually never been on a sailboat before moving on to Chuffed, so it was definitely a big learning curve. But I did grow up at the beach in a really small beach town in Australia, so I was really accustomed to the ocean. I was used to being on little power boats and going out in the rivers and the ocean, so I had some boating experience, but never sailing. Moving on board was a huge learning curve. Obviously living on a boat is very different to living on land. Really small things like getting groceries, instead of it just being a simple trip down to the grocery store, involves getting in the dinghy, waiting for the right weather, finding somewhere to leave the dinghy safely while you go into town on public transport. Then you finally get back and it's raining, so then you have to wait before you can take the dinghy back to the boat. Then you're offloading groceries in waves. You know, it becomes a really big job. So that was definitely part of the learning curve, was just getting used to boat life. Everything being broken. When I first moved on to Chuffed, I had no refrigeration, the toilet didn't work, it was pretty rustic. And then obviously the other big learning curve was learning to sail. Sailing's not incredibly hard, but I had never done it before, and so even just raising the mainsail was something that I had to learn to do. In the beginning, I was mostly doing spay and neuter campaigns and doing educational workshops with the local zoos and wildlife sanctuaries. That too was a really big learning curve because I had to figure out how to get into contact with these places, how to kind of sell myself as something that could help them and hopefully help improve animal health and welfare with what they were doing. So I really had to learn how to approach these places and do the work and get started. So it took a little time. In the early days, the budget was essentially non-existent. I'd bought Chuffed and started doing the veterinary work just kind of out of my own pocket. At that time, we really didn't have very many followers, and even fewer people who were subscribed and supporting. So yeah, it definitely took a little while to build the budget to a point that we're able to do the veterinary work like we do now. Being the captain was a really different experience to being a crew member on a sailboat. In the end, you're in charge, and that can make it really scary because you're making at times pretty important decisions that could endanger the life of other people and yourself and your boat. So it definitely was a bit of a scary prospect becoming a captain for the first time. I really learned that there's a lot more to being a captain than just being a good sailor. I wouldn't even necessarily say I'm a really great sailor now, but I do think I'm a good captain because I've learned how to fix most of the things on the boat, and learning to do things like navigate properly and make good weather choices and route planning choices is probably the most important part about being a captain, and keeping cool under pressure when things go wrong, which does happen. I just finished my first night shift. Nothing on Chuffed can go without incident. I learned to do the work out of the boat out of a combination of learning from other people and necessity. Because ultimately, if you're out in the middle of nowhere on an anchorage and your engine won't start, you really don't have any other option except to try and fix it yourself. And so a lot of it really was just learning because I had to. But I was really, really lucky to have a lot of help along the way, both from boat neighbours and people who specifically came to help me on Chuffed. They taught me a lot of things, particularly mechanic stuff about how to fix engines, but also things about wiring and how to get a fridge to operate and what aluminium, how that all works and the corrosion aspect and all that kind of thing. So yeah, I definitely learned a lot. I've been really, really lucky to work with a huge variety of exotic animals, which has been really cool. In Panama and Costa Rica in particular, I worked with a lot of wildlife, so lots of really cute baby animals like sloths and jaguarandis, kinkajous, monkeys, pretty much anything you can think of wildlife-wise I was able to work with in Costa Rica and Panama. I also did a lot of sea turtle work, which was really cool, in particular doing fishhook removals, and that was a really fun part of working in those countries. I'm hungry. As cool as all the wildlife is, I also really, really enjoy doing the domestic animal work though. I think that it makes a bigger difference in the community working with the domestic animals, particularly doing vaccination and spay and neuter campaigns, because it has such a ripple effect on the health of the people, the wildlife, the environment. And I also think you meet some really special dogs and cats along the way that you get really attached to as well, which is a really nice element when you can save them. So we do have a mini veterinary clinic on board. I carry things like scales to weigh animals, which is really important for anesthetics, basic medicine like antibiotics and anti-inflammatories, needles, syringes, things to do intravenous fluid therapy. I kind of have everything I need to do basic treatments and surgeries from the boat if necessary. We get our supplies from a number of locations. Some are donations from veterinary hospitals, particularly in the United States, which is really cool. That helps us a lot. I also order supplies just on the internet, things like bandage materials, and we also have local veterinarians help supply us, particularly when we're doing something like a spay and neuter campaign or a vaccination campaign. The local veterinarians help us order everything we need. So there's two very important reasons to work with local veterinarians and organisations. The first is being able to have permission to work in the country we're in. So I'm not licensed to work in these countries and I'm doing volunteer work, and that means that I have to work under the supervision of local veterinarians. So getting them involved is a really important element, particularly with vaccination and spay and neuter campaigns. And possibly the more important reason to work with local veterinarians is because the whole purpose of what we're doing is to empower local people and the local community to continue doing the good work with the animals after we leave. And so working with local organisations and veterinarians ensures that the education is being passed around and that we're leaving them with resources to be able to continue helping animals. The other reason we really like working with local veterinarians is because we really don't want to take away their work. Instead, we want to be able to help create more opportunities for them to have paid work in their community. The best parts about living on a boat are being so connected with nature. So because you're on a boat and you're in the elements, if it's storming, if there's dolphins, if there's birds, you see it and you're kind of involved with it, which I think is a really, really cool aspect. And then obviously there's also the freedom to travel with your home, which is one of the best things about having a boat, being able to go to new anchorages and new countries, but still have kind of that cozy feeling of having your home with you. The worst parts about living on a boat is the constant need for repairs. No matter how much work you do, there is always something that needs fixing, and it's usually at a very inconvenient time. And sometimes it's just as simple as like the gas goes out at 5 in the morning while you're trying to make your morning cup of coffee, and then you have to climb down into the bilges and, you know, reconnect new gas. That's also kind of some of the fun parts. And then obviously, as you've seen in previous episodes, getting seasick really sucks as well, but usually it passes quickly. The haul out has been a long process, but it was 100% necessary. Chuffed really wasn't in condition to continue sailing safely. And so we are really, really proud of the work we did, and so happy to have given Chuffed such a major refit and overhaul. She really is nearly perfect now, and particularly once we replace the engine, she will be the perfect cruising boat. So all in all, I have no regrets about doing such a long haul out. In hindsight, it's always easy to look back and think about the things you would have done differently, but obviously you're always working with the knowledge you have at the time. So all in all, I think it went as well as it could have. The One Health concept is working within the paradigm that animal health, environment health, and human health is all interconnected. And so by helping one aspect, you're helping all aspects. So it's very multidisciplinary, where you're involving lots of different people from lots of different sectors and working together to really try and help improve all of, you know, the entire planet's health. And so that's why we feel what we do is really, really important, because by helping the animals and then sharing it with all of you, we're hopefully making a bigger change for the community, with the humans that live in it, the other animals that live in it, and of course the wider environment and ecosystems. My advice for people who are hoping to do something like what I'm doing is finding something you're good at, finding something you love, and then finding something that you feel needs change in the world. And so for me, I'm really passionate about animals. Obviously, I love animals and I love to travel. And then I also am good at helping animals because I'm a veterinarian, and I really think that there can be such huge improvements in the availability of healthcare for animals and the standards of healthcare for animals. And so for me, the sailing vet was a way for me to do that, but it can look different for everybody. But I think having that passion, love, skill, and drive to change something is really, really important. Short term, repowering Chuffed is the most important thing right now. We have the engine on the way and we're just waiting for it to arrive. But in the meantime, we are keeping busy while we wait. We've got vaccination campaigns planned for locally here near Puerto Madero, but we also are hoping to travel a little further afield and visit, for example, San Cristobal, which we've been to before when we very first arrived in Mexico, to help with one of their public animal care campaigns that they do there. They have a public veterinarian who does really great work. Once Chuffed is repowered, our plan is to start heading north up the Pacific coast of Mexico, with the ultimate goal being to get into the Sea of Cortez. Along the way, we will be implementing our new project Mission Mexico, with the hope of improving animal health and welfare in the long term along the entire coast of the Pacific, Mexico. I hope you all enjoyed learning a little bit more about me and how I came to be on Chuffed, and seeing some of the old footage. It was kind of fun going through it all. I'd like to take this opportunity to say a huge thank you to everybody who supported us along the way. We really couldn't have gotten to this point without our patrons and everybody who's ever made a once-off donation to help make our mission to save animals and sail possible. If you're excited about our mission and want to help us continue it, you can become a patron and you get lots of extras like live updates each week, or you can make a once-off donation as well that'll go directly towards helping save an animal. Until next time, stay chuffed, everybody.